If you are a dismissive avoidant, here is something that you can work on. Leslie Wells, Connection Coach. I help individuals heal, thrive, and improve their romantic relationships by looking at things through an attachment lens. If you are unfamiliar with dismissive avoidant, go back and look at some of my other videos where I dive a lot deeper. So one of the things, if you've been with me for any length of time, you know about dismissive avoidance is that they are very good at compartmentalizing. Because they learned at a young age to suppress and distract from their emotions because the adults around them, their caregivers, their parents, were emotionally neglectful. And whenever they brought up emotions, they essentially were not responded to. They were dismissed. They were sometimes punished. They were told essentially that they needed to suck it up, get over it, or they just tried to go ahead and brush past the emotions. So the child learned to compartmentalize, to take those emotions, push them down, put them in a box, put them on a shelf, and distract through play. So we will see adults who grow up that are dismissive avoidants who will do the same thing. Whenever a problem, feedback, something that brings up negative emotions for them comes up into play, they will take those emotions, they will push them down, they will withdraw away from them, pull away, put them in a little box, and just leave them there and hope that they stay there forever. If you're in a relationship with a dismissive avoidant, you recognize really quickly that during conflict, if you bring them a problem, they will brush it under the rug, never to talk about it again or bring it up again. So you'll hear me say over and over again that the dismissive avoidant is triggered by a few things. And those things are intimacy, closeness, connection, expectations. They're triggered by criticism. They're triggered by the overwhelming emotions of others that they don't know what to do with. But it's not necessarily these things that they're truly afraid of at their subconscious level. These are the things that trigger them. But what they're ultimately, and conflict is another big one, obviously, but it's not ultimately the conflict or the expectations or the intimacy that they're really afraid of. It's actually the feelings that come up for them around those things. So that's why the feelings are snatched up and put into that compartment and placed away. So part of the work of the dismissive avoidance is to actually take those feelings out of the box and allow them to come up. Now, we want to do this in a slow, gradual way. We want to titrate up their capacity and tolerance to be able to sit in those emotions. And we want to actually do that with paired safety signals. And so part of the thing that I teach avoidance to do, and a lot of times we sort of push this attachment style by the way that we parent boys in general. So I see a lot of men that are avoidantly attached, and that's because we have sort of as a society decided that men shouldn't feel big emotions and that they need to be stoic and strong, and that looks like avoiding their emotions and not actually processing them or showing them. So we've sort of created that. So I deal with a lot of men that struggle with this, and I actually deal with a lot of military men, and so the tools for doing this helps them as well, because in order to go into combat or to do your job as a military person, you have to essentially be able to take your emotions and put them in a box and compartmentalize them. You have to do the same thing in high-risk jobs, whether you're a police officer, whether you're a fireman, but when there's a crisis, you cannot get caught all up in your feelings. You have to be able to shove them down, put them in a box, put them in a compartment, and put them away until the crisis is over. But if you don't take them out of that box when the time is appropriate and process those things, they are eventually going to affect you. They're going to affect your ability to stay healthy. They're going to actually come out and create long-term health problems. They're going to affect your relationships, and you're going to not be able to experience emotions, period. You don't get to choose what you suppress. So if you're suppressing fear, anger, rejection, abandonment, disrespect, anything that you decide to suppress that is a so-called negative emotion, and I would argue that emotions should not be labeled as negative or positive. They're just emotions, and we do not judge them, and we just call them out and see them for what they are. But if you suppress those emotions, you also don't get to decide which ones you suppress. So you eventually will not experience as much happiness, joy, excitement, and all of the things that we would consider good. So if you're a dismissive avoidant, part of your job and part of the work that I do with people is help you to actually take those emotions out of the box and let them come up. And you have to be able to sit in them while pairing safety signals. So because your nervous system responds to these emotions that are unfamiliar and you don't know what to do with, that is really where the real fear is. So if you can slowly increase the amount of time that you spend in the uncomfortable emotions while you are sending safety signals through your nervous system, then you will begin to your brain will become familiar with those feelings. And so what's familiar isn't so scary. It does not create the same sense of fear. And with that fear comes that need to push them down and put them in that box. The other thing that happens when you pair the safety with it is your nervous system calms down and your brain and your body recognize, oh, I'm safe in these emotions. I can actually sit here through a little bit. And the reason that's important is because emotions are energy in motion. They have to move, they have to come out. So you have to actually take the box, unwrap it, let them come out and move out, and then they're no longer there. And you do this by doing it in smaller amounts over time, gradually. I call this titrating up. And again, this is really important for people who work in jobs where there's crisis or military. So a lot of the people that I work with, they learn through these tools how to, go into a stressful situation, a very stressful environment where a lot of times there's trauma that comes from those environments, and they're able to push those feelings down, separate themselves from it, compartmentalizing it, and put it in that box in order to do what they need to do for their work. But then at the same time, afterwards, they're able to take that box, open it up, process it, actually deal with it so that there's not long-term effects in their relationships, their own mental health, their own emotional health, and their physical health. Because eventually, if you suppress, you are going to have physical long-term chronic problems. We have actually shown at the DNA level through telespheres that fray as a sign of aging that if you suppress your emotions, you actually die faster at the cellular level. It is absolutely terrible for people to suppress their emotions. Over time, it will catch up with you. And so one of the things that we can learn how to do is learn when it's appropriate to take those emotions out the box, what to do with those emotions, how to properly process them, not just experience them, because you can experience anger all day long or frustration, but if you're not pairing that with signals of safety and actually working through that, you're really not getting any better. You're just heightening that emotion. So actually being able to deal with that emotion when it comes up, and then know when and how to put it back in the box and back in compartmentalization so that you can go forward and do what you need to do. So if you are someone who is avoidantly attached, or you recognize that you struggle with this because of maybe your career, or your career exacerbates it, a lot of times people who are avoidantly attached will go into careers where this is to their benefit, whether you're an ER nurse or you're, someone who works with an ambulance crew, or you're a medic, or you're somebody who is in the military. You will often seek these positions because you're really good in a crisis and you're really good at numbing your emotions. So this is something that would help you both in your career as well as in your relationship. So if you're a dismissive avoidant, these tools to be able to do the nervous system work and to be able to get your feelings out of compartmentalization and know when to put them back in would be very, very helpful and useful to you.